Tonight on Reporting Scotland. Bold steps to tackle drug abuse. A Scottish Government advisor says ministers should consider legalising certain drugs.
What we have to do is start from the point of view that we do want to make change, and how we're going to do it.
We'll hear from a senior officer at Police Scotland who agrees. Also on the programme. Nearly 12 months on from the Manchester Arena bombing, survivors devise a 5-point plan to stop future terror plots. The First Minister promises a frank new debate on independence, but the Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson accuses her of trying to weaponise Brexit. Dominant in Scotland, but can Brendan Rodgers' Celtic take the next step and crack Europe? And the ballet dancer from Bangalore, fulfilling his dancing dream at a school in Argyll. Good evening. One of the Scottish Government's leading drug advisors says radical steps are needed to tackle a growing crisis. Dr. Roy Robertson has told ministers that their new substance misuse strategy, the first in a decade, needs to consider legalising certain drugs in a controlled manner. And in a radical departure from the norm, a senior officer with Police Scotland has agreed that the focus for users needs to be on support, not enforcement. Our correspondent Lucy Adams has this exclusive report.
Chief Inspector Alan Eldebrand used to believe that the key to tackling drugs lay in enforcement. But spending his free time with former addicts like Scott has changed his mind.
I think until you actually start engaging with these people and speaking to them, you probably don't realise that they are people. You know, they are people who use drugs.
He believes the police could make a big difference if their role under current legislation could be radically extended to allow officers to refer drug users directly to treatment rather than the courts.
At the moment we are limited in what our options are. If those options were widened and included a referral into the health system, then we would embrace that.
He now wants the police to help eradicate the stigma around addiction and be able to help users whilst enforcing the law only against the high-end organised criminals.
When I first met Alan about a year ago, he was talking about recovery for the individuals that had their problems. So that with his attitude, helped me change my attitude towards that, the stigma that I had.
And you helped change his towards you?
Yeah.
Scott started sniffing glue when he was 13. As he got older, he moved on to heroin and other drugs. His addiction ultimately led him to a cliff edge. He's been clean for 2 years now and helps others.
It was either really death or get better. That was where my addiction took me, and I think, you know, it sounds quite bad and quite dramatic, but you know that was the choices I had left in life.
To make things better, some doctors say it's time to legalise certain drugs. But currently the law, or more specifically the Misuse of Drugs Act, stands in the way of that. Those who want change say it must happen in a controlled manner.
That's the view of Dr. Roy Robertson, who's a leading advisor to the Scottish Government.
I mean, I think the issue isn't that we just throw out the Misuse of Drugs Act, because if we throw it out, we've got nothing, we've got no regulations. So what we have to do is start from the point of view that we do want to make change, and how we're going to do it.
Proportionately, Scotland has the highest drug death figures in the EU. In 2016, almost 900 people died, a rise of more than 20% on the previous year. Dr. Robertson says the next figures due in July will show another rise.
We know that drug deaths are going up and will go up. We know that we've got increased cocaine use, so you don't really need to speculate about what could get worse. I mean, if you want me to, I can, but things are as bad as they could be.
Drugs policy is reserved to Westminster, and the Home Office has made it clear it has no plans to change its current focus on enforcement. It recently rejected calls to change the law to allow safe injecting spaces in Glasgow. But Scottish ministers plan to meet with the UK government soon to try to persuade them to allow Scotland to take a different route to tackle its specific problems.
The Misuse of Drugs Act remains something that we need to engage with the UK government on to enable us to take forward bold ideas, innovative solutions to meet the challenges that Scotland has. So it absolutely will take on board Roy's views.
That's what you need to reduce demand. The only way you're going to reduce demand is by getting people like yourself who are using to actually get engaged with recovery communities.
Police and former addicts like Scott are hoping the Scottish Government's new strategy will take a very different approach and see addicts as people. Lucy Adams, reporting Scotland.
And tomorrow in her second special report, Lucy Adams will be looking at the length of time drug addicts have to wait before receiving treatment in Scotland. More than 40 survivors of terror attacks have signed an open letter setting out a 5-point plan to help stop future plots. It's to mark tomorrow's one-year anniversary of the Manchester Arena bombing, which killed 23 people, among them 14-year-old Ailey MacLeod from Barra. Stephen Godden reports.
The lights came on, the last song had finished and we headed out. We were just about to head through the doors and then suddenly there was a big blast. I just saw fire.
The Manchester terror attack, described by someone who experienced its horror firsthand.
I looked down and I was covered in blood. I still see it in slow motion and I know I can tell every single detail of exactly what I saw.
Among the 22 victims of the bombing was 14-year-old Ailey MacLeod from Barra. Her friend, 15-year-old Laura McIntyre, was seriously injured. Alex Brown had travelled to Manchester from Edinburgh for the concert to celebrate finishing third year at uni. A year on, she's still struggling.
I've lost a lot of friends. People didn't really know what to say or want to say anything. I'm much more anxious. I didn't sleep for about 2 weeks because it all had sort of just hit me. I've been diagnosed with PTSD.
Solidarity and shared experience led Mike Haynes to have this Manchester symbol tattooed on his wrist. Mike's brother David was murdered 4 years ago by IS in Syria.
We have become part of a club that nobody wants to join. It has changed our lives, but also it has given us strength, that determination to not let acts of terror win.
His is one of more than 40 signatures on an open letter sent from attack survivors to the British public, urging them to do more to tackle the hatred that he says results in acts of terror. Alex Brown, meanwhile, wants better support for those affected.
There doesn't seem to be the NHS support, there doesn't seem to be any sort of counselling support, and if there is, it's a 6 to 12 month waiting list.
While not discussing individual cases, NHS Lothians say specialist services are available for those affected by psychological trauma. Tomorrow, at public events and in quiet moments of reflection, the impact of what happened in Manchester a year ago will be remembered. Stephen Godden, reporting Scotland.
A former Celtic kit man has admitted charges of abusing a boy in Belfast just before his trial was due to start this morning. 72-year-old Jim McCafferty changed his plea from not guilty at Laganside courts in Belfast. He was accused of a series of sexual offences against the same boy over a 2-year period before December 2014. He's due to be sentenced next month. Detectives are investigating an attempted murder in Glasgow after a man in a car was shot at in the Scotstoun area. The incident happened around 6:30 last night. A 27-year-old man was parked in his car in Kingsway Court when another car pulled up beside him. The occupants shot at him, narrowly missing him. Police Scotland believe it was a targeted attack. Detectives investigating the murder of a German backpacker 30 years ago have arrested 2 men. 18-year-old Inga Maria Hauser vanished after she travelled to Larne from Scotland in 1988. Her body was found 2 weeks later in County Antrim. An appeal for information was made last month. Officers in Northern Ireland now say 2 men aged 58 and 61 are in custody. As the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon prepares to restart the independence debate this week, the Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson is calling on supporters of the UK to reboot the Union. Our political correspondent Glenn Campbell is at Holyrood with more. What have they been saying, Glenn?
Well, Ruth Davidson reckons the UK needs a new operating system to counter the movement for Scottish independence and the possibility of a second referendum. Those on the yes side are awaiting the publication of the SNP's Growth Commission report a bit later this week. They hope that will give them new arguments for independence. What it will not do, though, is give us a date for any second referendum.
The Growth Commission won't touch on the timing of an independence referendum, that's for later, but what it will do is focus on the opportunities of independence. And after a couple of years where the debate, not just in Scotland but across the UK, has been very much about how we limit the damage of Brexit, I think this is a refreshing opportunity to have a debate based on hope and ambition and about how we maximise Scotland's opportunities in the future.
The First Minister also said the Commission would not sugarcoat the challenges that would come with independence. But whatever this report says, it's not going to convince the Scottish Conservatives that independence is a good idea. They certainly will continue to argue the opposite case. And Ruth Davidson will do that whether or not it re-energises the independence debate, which has been very long running.
We find ourselves 11 years on, back almost where we started, with a minority nationalist government wanting us all to take one more go on the merry-go-round. I suspect to end up exactly where we began, with a majority unpersuaded, unconvinced and unimpressed. In the face of this, complacency among unionists might be tempting. Tempting, but it would be wrong.
She says the UK should divest London of some of its power and that the benefits of the union should be spread more evenly around the country. She floated ideas like the British Museum having a second home, the fishing industry being administered from Peterhead. She even suggested the home nations should bid jointly to host the World Cup, although she was careful to say she's not prepared to back a UK football team.
Glenn, thank you very much. A family from Nairn were among the 1,200 members of the public invited to the royal wedding on Saturday. Like the others, they were being honoured for their charity and community work, and our reporter Tim Muffet spent the day with them.
It's amazing. We're going to the royal wedding. How incredible is that?
A special day for a very special family.
It looks absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Who've been through so much.
My brother, Hamish, he passed away, so we started this charity thing called Team Hamish.
Hamish was 8 when he died last year. He was diagnosed with a soft tissue cancer aged 2 and a brain tumour when he was 7.
It's been emotional for us all, being here without Hamish and knowing that we're here because of him. So I'm sure he's watching us and very proud of what we've achieved.
Hamish's family have been raising money to create new community sites around Nairn in the Scottish Highlands where they live to help attract more visitors.
Yeah. Throughout Hamish's illness, we have had so much support for us, and now what we want to do is give back to that community. I've got that one. If you just put those together.
After Hamish passed away, for about 2 weeks, every day in the sky there was a rainbow, hence the dress and the brooch.
All this whilst Hamish's mum, Susan, is being treated for breast cancer.
It's been a very difficult, horrendous time, so what we're trying to do is create something positive out of something horrific.
So excited.
Hamish and Lily's grandparents, Susan's mum and dad, Danny and Liz, have also come along for this very special day.
So darling, darling, stand by me. Stand by me. Yeah. Stand by me. Stand by me.
It was amazing, the dress. It looked beautiful.
How was that?
It was fabulous. Just every good word that you could think. That's what it was.
We were treated like VIPs and saw far more than we thought.
We actually came to Windsor Castle with Hamish just 3 years ago, and so looking around, we were remembering those very happy moments. But we are creating what we hope will be a lasting legacy. What we're aiming for is for his name and memory to live on forever.
An unforgettable day, one to love and to cherish.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's 16 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Bold steps to tackle drug abuse. A Scottish Government advisor says ministers should consider legalising certain drugs. And still to come, plans for the first rocket launch dedicated to a Scottish satellite built in Glasgow. After winning all 3 major domestic trophies in consecutive seasons, the so-called double treble, progress in Europe will be Celtic managers Brendan Rodgers' next ambition. But in order to do that, he'll need help from their old firm rivals Rangers. So says the last man to take the club to a European final, Martin O'Neill. Jane Lewis reports.
All quiet at Celtic Park after a weekend of celebration. These the scenes 48 hours ago. The double treble complete. But the partying was barely over before talk turned to next season. And while hailing their domestic dominance, this former Celtic manager knows Europe will be a key ambition.
I think it's a great achievement. To do it once, obviously, is very good. Do it twice in the trot is excellent, and and they've deserved it as well too. You'll be hoping now that maybe with if Rangers are going to get stronger, I think that can only be good. I've said this for weeks, months, years now. Rangers getting stronger I think would only benefit this football club as well too for their and to try and get stronger in Europe.
But while they dominated domestically,
to Cham, there's number 2.
Doing well in Europe might be more tricky this coming season after UEFA added an extra round of qualifiers. Celtic enter the fray at the first qualifying round, the 2 legs coming mid-July. The second qualifying round comes the following week, the 2 matches played at the end of July, even before they've kicked a ball in the Scottish Premiership. It's then all about juggling league and European action, with the third round qualifiers coming early to mid-August. The final qualifying round comes at the end of August. If Celtic successfully negotiate all 4 qualifiers, they're through to the Champions League group stage.
It's going to be hard in the extra group stage that we've got, so I think it's 8 games now to try and get into the group stages, so it's going to be difficult, but it's always difficult, and we managed to do it the last 2 years, and we've got to make sure we do it this year as well.
Aiming high again,
and they will want more and more glory,
and relishing the challenge. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland.
Well, one club joining champion Celtic in the Premiership next season will be Livingston, back in Scotland's top flight for the first time in 12 years. They beat Partick Thistle in the playoff final, meaning the Jags are relegated. The Livy manager, David Hopkins, says he'll now talk to the board about his future. Rona McLeod can tell us more.
The Lions of Livingston have roared back to the top flight. Absolutely astonishing.
Back-to-back promotions from the First Division to the Championship and now the Scottish Premiership, all in the space of 2 years. Manager David Hopkins at the helm for all of it is now out of contract. Discussions tomorrow for him and his players.
Most of the boys have been there for 2 years. They've come through League One, they've come through a Championship, and all the players know they'll be offered new deals to stay, and it's just about adding quality to the squad that we have. We need to take more experienced players in.
Livingston were last in the top flight in 2006. A second place finish in the Championship set up a relegation playoff with Partick Thistle. Keegan Jacobs scoring the winner in the second leg.
And that might just send them into the Premiership!
Probably one of the best feelings of my life. But the boys deserve it. We've been unreal this season, and dug deep for the last 2 games. Well, the last 4 games in the playoffs, and thought we thoroughly deserved it.
We've done it, so it's a great feeling, it really is, and we'll look forward to next season and going to Parkhead and Ibrox and that, so, phenomenal.
Celebrations for Livingston joining St Mirren as the new boys of the Scottish Premiership. Partick Thistle have apologised to their fans. They'll plan for their future at a board meeting in the next few days. Rona McLeod, reporting Scotland.
Plans are in place for the first rocket launch dedicated to a Scottish satellite. Up till now, a Scottish-built probe has had to piggyback on another launch vehicle, so this is another milestone for the country's growing space industry. Our science correspondent Kenneth MacDonald has more.
It's likely to look a lot like this. A Vector R rocket is scheduled to lift off from Alaska later this year. On board will be Unicorn 2A, built in Glasgow, the first time a Scottish-made satellite hasn't piggybacked on someone else's launch. It's a type of satellite called a pocket cube. As the name suggests, it's not big, and that's a good thing.
It costs more than gold per kilogram to launch a satellite into space, and Alba is really focused on making that small and then also making it really capable, because it's no good making a small satellite if it's no good, but you want to make a small, really capable satellite to do lots of things, such as Earth observation, remote sensing, communications.
The mission of Unicorn 2A will be to image the Earth by night. The data could be used to estimate populations or even monitor the spread of disease. But something else has to happen first.
So once the payload gets to orbit, how do you deploy the satellite? Well, you don't need thrusters or explosive bolts. You need one of these things with the satellites inside. A spring-loaded door pops open, the satellite comes out. It's as simple as that.
Its proper name is a pod. It's precision engineered, and you can have fun testing it.
Basically, the pod is a jack-in-the-box with a spring-loaded door. Once the door opens, it releases the spring, and it just basically pushes the satellites out.
More than 70 Glasgow-built satellites are already up there, most of them from this company, Spire. It's part of a Scottish space industry that employs more than 7,000 people and turns over £2.5 billion a year. The launch of the American-built Vector R will make Alba Orbital the third Scottish company to get a satellite into orbit. And for satellites and rockets, it seems small is beautiful.
This is a new trend in the launch industry and is allowing us to fly faster than we would previously, so we don't have to wait on a big rocket to get filled up. We can go on a smaller rocket, and hopefully, in theory, that will allow us to launch more frequently and open up access to space.
The plan is one day to launch pocket cubes by the dozen. The Vector R has room for 2 this time, so there's also space for an experimental satellite from the Netherlands, because it's Scotland's turn to offer someone else a lift. Kenneth MacDonald, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Rahul Pradeep grew up in Bangalore in India and always yearned to be a ballet dancer. But stigma stifled his ambitions and he put those thoughts aside. More than 20 years later, 5,000 miles from home, thanks to a Scottish ballet school in Tainalt in Argyll, he's finally fulfilling his dream. Suzanne Allen went to meet him.
In a studio in the village of Tainalt, 26-year-old Rahul is training. He only started dancing at 20 and even then was too embarrassed to tell his parents.
For the first 2 years, I didn't even tell my family that I did ballet until I told we had a little performance coming up, biannual performance, and I was like, oh, by the way, I'm in a ballet show. Can you come and see it?
Ballet isn't popular in India. Each major city might only have one school. But that wasn't what held his love of dance back.
There's such a stigma attached to boys doing ballet. You know, there's always this misconception that it's very girly and very feminine.
But Rahul wanted to make his passion a career. His British ballet teacher in India urged him to apply to schools in the UK. It was Ballet West's tutors and the fact that students had gone on to have successful careers around the world that made up his mind.
You don't even dream of living in a place that's so pretty in the Highlands. I have teachers from all over the world at this school on top of a hill with its own lock.
The principal of Ballet West spent hours talking to Rahul and watching his videos from India before offering him a scholarship.
His mum's a single parent, so it was really hard for him to get the classes and be able to afford to do it all. And I just thought he sounded like a really lovely young man, and he is amazing. We have never regretted having him. He's a wonderful student and just a real asset to everybody who comes in contact with him, just loves him.
Earlier this year, the school staged a production of Giselle. There are 85 full-time BA honours students living and studying in Tainalt. The school, which was set up in 1991, has 500 children and young people doing ballet and other classes. Rahul's aspiration is to go back to India, spread the word about ballet and teach. But for now,
I wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm living the dream.
Suzanne Allen reporting Scotland, Tainalt.
Time for the weather. Christopher's here with glad tidings.
Yes, indeed, Sally. Thank you. Hello there. Good evening. Well, mixed fortunes weather-wise today. If you were in the east, dry, sunny and warm at 21 degrees in the capital. But look at that, just 8 degrees in Stornoway this afternoon because overhead a weather front bringing cloud and rain. We saw an inch of rain in places and scenes more like this one. Leaden skies, damp and breezy. Through the rest of this evening, that cloud, that weather front drifting eastwards, the rain tending to fizzle away, and by the end of the night most of us dry but fairly cloudy, nothing too cold, perhaps down to around 5 degrees in the northwest. And tomorrow, well, high pressure overhead. We still have that weather front trapped within it, so that's going to bring a fair amount of cloud tomorrow, but generally dry. The odd spot of light rain perhaps through the Northern Isles and across parts of Grampian, but increasingly sunny in the west and southwest. So by mid-afternoon, say around 4 o'clock, anywhere really from sort of Glasgow down towards Dumfries and Galloway, we're looking at temperatures rising up to 17 to 19 Celsius. Very pleasant indeed, with those winds coming in from the northeast. Come further east and compare with today, tomorrow is going to be quite disappointing for you. Much cooler. 12 degrees there in Aberdeen. It was close to 20 today. Further west, some sunshine coming through at times, dry and fine, and certainly an improving afternoon through Orkney and Shetland. And the rest of the afternoon into the evening, the cloud continuing to thin and break with high pressure building. So from midweek onwards, it's all about high pressure really. That's going to bring dry and fine conditions, settled and some warm sunshine. So let's take a look at Wednesday. You can see it's a dry day, it's a sunny day. There'll be some areas of cloud around, particularly across the north and northeast, but in the west and southwest, temperatures up to 20, maybe 21 Celsius. And looking ahead to Thursday, we continue that dry and sunny theme, 21 or 22 in the west, a little bit cooler around North Sea coast, but really set fair. That's the forecast for now.
Sounds good, thank you. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. Relatives of those killed in the Grenfell Tower fire have been remembering their loved ones at the start of the public inquiry into the disaster, which 72 people died. And one of the Scottish Government's leading drug advisors says radical steps are needed to tackle a growing crisis, and a senior police officer has agreed that support, not enforcement, should be considered. That's all from Reporting Scotland for now. I'll be back with the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Till then, from everyone on the team around the country, good evening.